Hello and welcome to a new YEV podcast. And YEV, Kevin,
Why not?
exactly why isn't Alex here yet? So
Yeah.
people that normally watch the live will notice that either Alex has changed massively or we have a special guest. So I think without further ado, Jess, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us, a little intro, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Tim. So yeah, I'm Jess Shanahan. I am a speaker and a journalist specialising all things to do with electric mobility and clean energy. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn talking about these topics, but also create a lot of video content. And I also run my own content marketing agency as well called Jet Social, where I work with a lot of brands as well.
Cool. No, it sounds good. And I was quite amazed. I wasn't amazed, but I was just your LinkedIn following is huge. So it's good to see that you've got some great support there. Alex, thanks for joining us. You're in a new location.
I'm in the location I get to if I've got no time set up in the garage this week.
So as everyone might know, we're going to be talking about, do dealerships give the right EV advice? And I thought it'd be great to have, we all thought that it'd be great to have Jess on as well with her experience. And I thought what we could do is start with just a little bit of explanation of what our thoughts are on it, and then we can discuss it and see if we can thrash something out that makes sense, essentially. Kev, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So probably the first kind of experience we had with EV, back with our first one. So my wife got a Renault Zoe, and remember the old battery lease deal that they used to have? So when she got the Renault Zoe, the first one, she had the car on 12,000 miles, and the dealership said, it's okay, just put the battery on 2,000 miles, they won't ask. And that was our first experience. It's like we matched it to the mileage of the actual car. But it was just little things like that. And the fact that they didn't really know about charging it. And even more recently, I've helped someone get a new Zoe, and they were saying they were all rapid charging. But obviously they're not. It's only the ones with CCS. And it's just, if you pick that car, you think it's got rapid charging. The first time you turn up and think, oh, there's no holes at the bottom for the charging. I mean, that's, bad experience that puts you off straight away. So that's, it's just, I think a lot of the time you go into a dealership and you know more than the dealers sometimes. And I think a lot of that is, which surprised me when I've worked with dealers, that not a lot of people, I'm surprised how few people are car people that work in car dealerships. They're salespeople, not car people, which this amazes me. I thought they'd all be like into their cars, but they're not.
Alex, do you want to give us a little spiel on what your thoughts are on this particular subject?
I think it's probably best to start from personal experience. I mean, I have mentioned before on this that the servicing issues that we've had, e-rifter wise, the garage is always good when we've dealt with them. We've been going there for ages, but there's been some interesting confusion around service intervals on that car in terms of I've been offered an engine flush on it, assured that it would improve the emissions performance of the vehicle, and was then the car and the dealer CMS and the app for the car as well. In fact, the app still says that I'm overdue a service on it. I'm not. It had a major service last year. That's once every 2 years. If you trusted the app and you trusted the dealer to do it, I mean, actually, once I said to them that it was electric, they had the details up on the screen at that point. So I'd already given them my reg number, and I said to them, "What are you doing for?" I think it was about £300, and they said, "Oh, we're changing the oil." And I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "Yeah, no, it's not. It's electric." And then, even leaving there, then the car was still saying that it needed a service. The app then told me that I needed a service as it logged on. And then I got an email as I was leaving going, "Thanks for having your MOT book with us. Would you like a service with us?" And I think, obviously, I know, and I'm well aware that the servicing intervals are longer on these vehicles. And I remember taking it in last year and being aware that it was going to be 48 months. But if you were not so up on how often those cars needed to be serviced, and you were used to taking it in every year, you might well trust what they're saying there and take it in have an unnecessary service, or or end up taking it in only to be told, well, actually, you don't need this at all. It just becomes a bit of a confusing situation, really.
I've just noticed that every time I put someone's comment on, it's hiding everyone's face. So I'll try and get the mix right here. And Dean and the EV guy, hi, guys, and commuter branch line, make sure that we answer your questions in a minute. But Jess, far away. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's best that I start with my own personal experience as well. So I bought a Renault Zoe in 2020, and it was the end of 2019 at that point. We got it in 2020, which was a great time to not drive my car at all. But the experience was strange. I'd gone in thinking, this is going to be fun. I know tons about electric cars, even though this is the first one I've owned because I've been testing them for so long. Let's see what the sales experience is like. And this guy had not a clue. And he kind of stumbled through selling us this car, but we were already sat on the one we wanted. He didn't have to do a big job. But then it took an extraordinary amount of time to get the car because we bought it brand new for the first time in our lives. And then when it came to like signing all the paperwork and all of this kind of thing, he's like, so do you know how to charge it? And I said yes, because I do. And he was like, okay, good, because I don't. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, have you not driven one? He's like, no, I haven't had a chance yet. And I was like, okay, cool. I mean, there's several sitting outside this dealership. And then at some point during that same conversation, he asked me what I did as a job. And I told him, and he was like, that's good news, because it meant that he didn't have to explain this electric car to me. And then when it came to actually handing it over, he's like, do you want me to show you around it? I was like, don't worry. Just don't worry. Obviously, I think things have got a little bit better since then, but my most recent kind of car buying, leasing experience was with GridServe, who were obviously great. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I've now got a Polestar, and it was delivered by Polestar, so the handover was excellent. But yeah, the Zoe experience, I think, is quite similar to what people are still experiencing at a traditional dealership setting.
No, thanks for that, Chris.
That's one of the reasons I've switched to leasing now, is because I go on a fully maintained lease, and there's none of this arguing like if there's something wrong with it. It's just, well, the leasing company is much bigger, so you take it in and say this is wrong, and they sort it. So there's a lot to be said for that. But it's really because you're basically cutting the dealer out. All the dealer is an agent to do what the leasing company asks then.
I'm just going to go through the comments, and then I'll give my little spiel, I suppose. So the EV guy, hello, mate. Short answer, no. In my experience, most dealerships are lacking the right knowledge to support their customers, make an informed choice, and salespeople will take the easier sale. Oh, yes, salespeople like to do that. I should know. Why do we have dealers? The sooner we go down the Tesla sales model, the better. Pay the RRP, no haggling, no salespeople, just advisors. Well, on that case, a lot of manufacturers have gone down the that route. In fact, Audi did, and they recently stopped going down that route. I heard the other day when I visited the dealer I used to work for, and I'm not sure why. I think it was becoming that they'd seen a drop in sales. I can't remember the model they call it now. What's it called? The
agency model.
Agency model. That's it.
Yeah, because Genesis has done the same. Genesis were direct, and now Genesis is starting to do dealerships through Hyundai and stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of manufacturers that have done that. I think it was like a COVID thing of like, well, we need to sell online. How do we do this? And then they did it well enough while people were willing to buy a car in that way. And now that people don't need to buy a car in that way, everyone's realized just how difficult it is to maintain this kind of like global agency model, and they've gone, actually no, we need to go back to having our silos and our dealerships and everything, because it then they can manage it. It's not just one global team in charge of every single sale anymore.
Well, it looks like Willie has had a bad experience. He was lied to by a Toyota dealer, paid a deposit for a BZ4X. There's another bit here. It broke down. The mileage was half what was quoted. The total price was 62k. The Bright bought it back off me for 38k 9 months later. Wow. Yeah. I mean, there's I'll give you my experience. So I've been in car sales many years previously to be in the EV world, and my last job was at Northampton Audi, 2009 2015. And just to jump on to Kevin's point about salespeople aren't car people, I think it's a bit of a mix. I would say it's about half and half, although it all depends on the dealership, of course, as well. I've always, as a salesperson, I was always a massive car person, and it was really important to me to try and find the right car for someone. I didn't have the fortune or misfortune of selling EVs, but cars were getting increasingly harder to do handovers on. And ultimately, a salesperson just wants to sell you the car because that's what he gets paid for. And yes, okay, there's the looking after piece, and that helps with retention of customers in 2, 3, 4 years' time, potentially. That's what it used to be historically, but not always the case these days, because customers do like to shop about these days. I don't think you can generalize on it. I think, to be fair, and I feel like I'm going to kind of help out the salespeople here, that actually, the amount of training out there probably isn't that good, and the opportunity to drive these cars aren't always available. Although most brands have got electric cars now, and I think you could argue also, if they're car people, what kind of car people are they? Are they die-hard petrol heads? Because if so, they're not going to give a rat's ass about electric car, are they? The first electric car I drove was I think it was an Audi e-tron, and I was blown away. I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. Knowing that now that it's probably the car that I'd purchased the least due to its efficiency, because it's like a breeze block. But I think it's tricky. I don't think all salespeople are going to be out there just trying to go the quick sales route. And, I think there are some genuine salespeople out there that do care. So I think it mainly comes down to bad training. I think that's what it really boils down to. So is this coming from, main dealers actually not doing their job properly, not training their staff properly? I'm not sure. But just to go back into the comments here, almost without exception, sales folk came right out and said, you know more than EVs. Yeah, you might know more about EVs than me. They either didn't know or didn't want to know about the EV. Service department needs particular scrutiny. I suppose just before I kind of put it out to everyone again, the last kind of experience I've had, I went to go and have a look at the Audi Q6, which I was quite excited about. It's quite a nice looking vehicle. It's quite interesting to see the new tech. The salesperson, he knew the real basics, but bearing in mind, we're all kind of charge heads, we're all kind of EV people. We're going to want to know the details. So I don't think it's entirely fair that, when you talk to a salespeople, because you're bound to know loads more than them, but I think there are certain pulls and pushes towards particular vehicles because they need to sell particular cars to hit targets. So I don't think going to a dealer is the right place to get EV advice, if I'm being completely honest. So that leads me on to say, where is the right place to get EV advice? Guys, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think some dealers are trying to make the effort, because I've worked with the local MG dealer, and I think I quite like the way they've done it, because a lot of their salespeople start off as trainees. The trainees tend to do the handovers, and I've been brought in a few times to train the trainees, because even the trainees had never rapid charged an EV. So the first thing I did was take them down to a rapid charger and show them how that actually works. And I think they're a lot better at it, because the handovers are done with people who are then learning the cars. So then they'll promote them into salespeople, which seems to work a lot better. And that's an MG dealer, but they're quite big on customer service, especially now they've expanded to like most of South Wales. So.
Yeah, I would say that every MG dealer and Hyundai and Kia dealer tend to be miles better than any of the other brands. I don't know if you guys have felt the same, Alex, Jess.
The Hyundai dealer is quite interesting with me, because they've seen me in the ad that I did for Hyundai now, so I've got no excuse. They know who I am.
They see you coming and they hide, is what you're saying, Kev.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Alex, Jess?
Well, after you. It's a complicated one.
Yeah, like I don't have experience with lots of dealers, but certainly what I'm seeing from what other people are saying, I would agree. MG, Kia, Hyundai, they're doing well, because I think that they are pushing their electric cars and they care about them. They're not just a thing that they have to do, and you can tell that from the way that they market themselves. But in terms of where people can be getting this information or should be getting this information. I think there are a lot of good organizations and platforms and people that are giving great advice on electric cars, and Women Drive Electric is one that I always see as a group on Facebook who are saying, hey, if you want to get an electric car, come to us, ask questions. We know the stuff, and it's a safe space where people aren't going to shout at you about, wanting to buy an electric car and all of this kind of stuff. And I think that's great. But all of these great people who are doing all of these different things, we're all separate. So like I do EV FAQs on YouTube, and that's great. Someone might find my video about, do you want a socketed or tethered charger? Brilliant. But there's no like one place or like one group that's giving all of this information. We can all go and watch a video, listen to a podcast, whatever it might be. But we're in the industry. We like this stuff. We're looking for it. The average person that's just a person who wants to buy a car, and the obvious choice to them is whatever the newest one is. If they're buying an EV, they just think, okay, well, the dealership's going to tell me. And that's that. And then they get to the point where they have to plug in and charge and pay, or it doesn't work. And then they're just like, what do I do? They're stuck.
No, absolutely. Jess, what's your YouTube channel? Give it a shout out.
It's just my name. It's Jess Shanahan, but I don't post on it anymore. Just because the process of making my very, very highly produced EV videos got just too much work for zero money. So I don't do it anymore. But I am thinking of going back to the EV FAQs because I think they're important.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, good shout. I'll go and take a look. Alex, what are you thinking?
I mean, I've had a part in kind of producing content that helps explain some of these Q&As. I'm for various different clients. It seems to be a demand out there for it, but exactly as Jess said, it's a fragmented kind of space in terms of there's an awful lot of places out there giving this advice, and some of it's better than others as well. I mean, I've seen some quite significant, niggly bits and pieces on websites that are kind of offering some of this advice in terms, getting little details wrong that could be quite a nightmare. But I mean, it's the little things that you don't get with the handover. I mean, the handover process, I think, has been stunted by, I mean, COVID didn't help. COVID kind of happened to happen as this was kind of particularly the retail side was taking off, where you don't have that backup of, say, leasing companies having their ability to kind of give you the information that you need. Because I know leasing companies tend to have quite a lot of of information about EVs and charging and some of the practicalities of it. You didn't get that kind of safety net with the private customers that were coming through in sort of 2020, 2021 with extra money still at low interest rates at that point. And also then you were kind of having the socially distanced, the sealed vehicles, the handovers in the plastic bags and things like that. And I think there's been a little bit of a loss of kind of that customer facing service that's kind of dragged on since. I think people have kind of got a little bit more used to kind of that not having that same kind of being walked through everything, and actually that cuts both ways, and that some people I think will probably walk in and think, why would I need a handover for this? Surely it's just easy, and other people will want to have their handheld and maybe don't get the expert advice that they need when they're doing it. I mean, we saw Kevin and I did a road trip about 3 years ago and bumped into somebody who was plugging in to a rapid charger for the first time, and she couldn't work out why it was a E208. She couldn't work out why the DC, the CCS plug wasn't going into the socket on her car, and she still got the caps over the two pins for the DC charging at the bottom. And it's little things like that then she was plugging in. I think she was over 80% charged, and she was only going
like 89 or 90, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of at that point you're paying large amounts of money for a rapid charger on something that's charging quite slowly, that isn't really going to give you any meaningful range back, and is going to take it's going to take a very long time and charge you an awful lot of money for unnecessary extra range. And that whole range piece, I think, is a really important piece to get across, and I think this comes across in some of the news stories that we had in 2021, 2022, where you had queues at chargers and so on, is that people were not kind of briefed on the kind of the etiquette and the point of kind of charging rates slowing down after 80%, and kind of the most time efficient ways to do that. And so you ended up with a lot of people kind of doing their first long trips at the end of 2021, I think it was. We had all the really big queues all at the same time over Christmas holidays, people who are relatively inexperienced at kind of doing those trips and perhaps hadn't been walked through that process. And it only takes a few of those to shake confidence in the people coming down the line. They go, well, I've had a massive queue here, and so whereas I might have stopped at 80%, well, I'm now going to charge to 90% just in case the next place has got a queue. And it just snowballs. So you end up with those little situations where somebody doesn't quite know what they're doing, doesn't quite know how to efficiently use the chargers, and you end up with inefficient infrastructure later down the line as well, which is an issue as well. So it's little things, isn't it? It's just kind of, there's no massive adjustment with EVs, but it is different. And I think it's just getting people's heads around some of those little quirks and things that just help them get through it.
No, absolutely. And I want to come back to the charger point because I think that's quite a valid one, because it's quite often that, you know, we people ask me for advice, and I'm sure you guys have had the same. But let me just go through the comments. So Malcolm has put, back in 2020, I went into a VW dealer and I was interested in the VW E-Up, obviously the Northern Edition. And all they did was try to convince me EVs were rubbish. Ended up getting a Zoe, which was excellent. That's interesting. YouTube is a massive bonus for prospective car buyers. If you ask me, you know, between 2 or 3 models which you fancy, watch a few YouTube videos reviewing these cars, and your mind is 99% made up. No, good comment, Dean. Bernard has said, my EV had a parking brake fault, and it was due to the brake clean. Was not on the 2-year service plan. I think it is new tech for many manufacturers. Yes, a lot of obviously doing a lot of regen braking there. Good work, Bernard. Keep that efficiency up. I've lost count the number of the amount of new EV drivers that I've met at rapid chargers and walked them through charging their vehicles. I would then introduce ZapMap, charge points, etc., as well as a few basics. Yeah, absolutely, and we will come back to that. Dean's put, exactly, commuter. Why doesn't the dealership do their own FAQ YouTube videos? There we go. It's one for you, Jess. Any new customers that have brought an EV, head over to the YouTube FAQ for EV drivers to help them with the transition to their new EV. Bernard's back. Zoe's a nice and cheap EV, but I hope its replacement doesn't have its PEC wrapped with the motor. Okay, yeah, which is a service item approximately. I hope you meant 80,000 miles, because 800,000 miles, I mean, I don't know any Zoes that have hit that yet, but that would be good going when it needs a bearing change. Yeah, I've heard that's a bit of a problem on those, Bernard. Yeah, I'm guessing it's 80K. Why are councils installing 3-phase 22 kilowatt chargers when most cars are single phase 77 kilowatt?
Surprising number aren't now, though.
Go on, sorry, buddy.
A surprising number, 11 kilowatts. You think all the Hyundai stuff is 11 now, so 3-phase is actually quite handy.
Well, it's this education piece, isn't it? A lot of people in councils probably don't know. It's like, oh yeah, 22 kilowatt AC, that sounds great. It might be the fact that it's a dual charger, and when 2 people are plugged in, happy days, 11 each. You know,
the other thing is
there might be other, you know, and you could argue that charging infrastructure companies could potentially go into the next video for, do charging infrastructure companies give the right advice? Because yeah, again, like Bernard has said there, you know, it all depends on your AC onboard charger, how fast you can charge on AC. Commuter branch line, but a friend did a mystery shop, visited 6 local Hyundai dealers. He confirmed that only one of the dealers completed a reasonable amount of the KPIs that the visits hoped to confirm were being met. Oh, I'd love to be a mystery shopper.
Yeah,
that would be a lot of fun. I wanted to go back to charging, and everyone's talked about, well, you mentioned, Alex, about, someone trying to use a DC charger. I'll tell you the most common thing, and this has happened to me before, is actually getting the charger out of the car. It's been stuck. I had a chat recently with a Mercedes, whatever it was, EQC SUV thing. And he couldn't get it out. And I didn't have the knowledge, even me, didn't have the knowledge. I don't know if you guys do, to unplug the charger on the Mercedes. It wasn't obvious at all.
I know where the emergency release is in the Kona and the Ioniq 5. There is an emergency release cable that you can just pull the pin switch out.
Well, there should be on all cars, all EVs. But I was just thinking, how do you do it normally? Was it off the key fob? Anyway, we digress. But what other issues and what other questions have you guys been asked? I'll let Jess go first. At the charging stations, have you had any questions when you've been charging at all with people struggling?
Yeah. A lot of the time it's getting the charge to connect. So I see a lot of people just standing there looking at their phones, looking at the bank card in their hand, looking at the charger, and I'm like waiting to see if it's just, is this a time thing? But more often than not, I'll be like, are you okay there? But I don't want to be like really patronizing, going, are you struggling with, this technology? But I just try to be really gentle about it. But I'm a big proponent of phone the helpline, which people don't do. And I had one recently. There were 3 cars stuck on charge. They couldn't release the charge of these they were quite old, slow units outside a hotel. And there were these 2 guys that were in like work gear, clearly were late for work. They were like, we've been here since 6 a.m. And I think at this point it was 7:45 in the morning. And I was like, have you rung the helpline? They're like, no. And I was like, I ring the helpline. The helpline says, can you go into the hotel and just get their maintenance person to turn the chargers off and on again? I kid you not. So they got turned off and on again. These guys could release their cars and off they went. And I'm like, just a thank you would have been nice. Yeah. But like they'd sat there for almost 2 hours. For some reason, turning this charger off and on again did not release my car. And I was still stuck there for another 20 minutes on the phone to this, this person. I was plugging in, like it was obviously taking power from my car. So the charger was staying on, even when they turned off the big unit at the back. I don't know what the, electricity science is. But yeah, so that was just one where I was like, okay, well, I'll phone. And then everyone left while I was still on the phone. And I was like, okay, cool, good. I'm glad you're all going to work, and I was late. But it's little things like that of, we're expecting people to use brand new technology. And for the most part, it works and it's great. It's a bit different, might be a learning curve, but for the most part, it works. What we're not doing is educating people on the fact that there is a slight mindset change needed of how you charge, what the process is, and the fact that every single charger you go to is different. Getting better, but they're still all very different. And I think that's what people aren't being told. It's all good and well, you can watch 100 videos about regen braking these days, but no one is just out there going, by the way, every single charger is different. Good luck. Because we don't want to be painting this picture of EVs that's negative. And I get that because they're brilliant. But sometimes I think we're saying that everything's really easy with an EV and you just need to try one. But sometimes things aren't easy and you do need to just ring a helpline or queue or move or give up sometimes. And that sucks. But I've also had to do that at petrol stations.
Yeah. I think I'll remember, Alex will remember this as well. The best tip we've had on a rapid charger was from a guy called Bob Murphy from when he was with Charge Place Scotland, of when the charge doesn't initiate, just holding the charge point up a bit because it can't necessarily lock because of the weight of the cables and the data pins of those 2 small ones. And that's actually saved me a load of times when people said the charger's not working. And it's because people bash the ends of the chargers, so they're not necessarily as perfect as they'd like. So just holding that up and while it initiates the charge has saved me no end of times and actually got the charger to work.
Yeah, someone said that to me recently. I'd had a couple of tricky chargers where I plugged in the Polestar and it either wouldn't connect or just there were things going wrong. And someone said, have you tried just holding the charger up because it's too heavy for the car? And I was like, obviously not. Why would I have just immediately thought of that? And I consider myself at the expert end of someone who charges a car, I would say. But yeah, I wouldn't have even have thought about that until someone said it.
Yeah, it's the charging one. A funny thing, my dad sent me a picture. It was at a GridServe charging station in his new ID3. He never charged his old ID3 at a public charger station. So he's had an electric car for 5 years, and that's the first time. And his comment was, first time I've charged away from home at these prices. I hope it's the last time, which made me giggle. Obviously we're giving them a little bit of a bash in the dealerships, but I think what might be handy is, and I don't think they could do this from an OEM level, and I don't know how much they actually do it, but just give the new customer, look, just watch this video. It's 2 minutes. It will help you out. It'll, FAQs, it'll answer your questions. And if you've got any more questions, don't hesitate to give us a call or watch this other video. It can't be that hard to do that. And if anybody wants me to do that videos for your OEM, then I'm more than happy to. And I'm sure Jess is as well, or Kevin or Alex. Or we could all do it.
Yeah, there's tons of us who can do this kind of thing.
Exactly.
But I've pitched this to dealers, and they always go, "No, we don't need it." I'm like, okay, either it's me, you don't need it, or you don't know what you're talking about. I don't know which one of those it is. I don't mind which one of those it is, but I think you're right, and I think it should be part of the sales process to go, here's some more information, because then you can get excited about your car, you can watch the videos that are coming through, and then also you're set and you're not having bad experiences that make you go, EVs are terrible, or whatever it is that people tend to think from these poor experiences once they are released out into the world.
No, absolutely. And I think that would probably reduce the percentage of people going back to ICE as well, which is a very small percentage from the stats. However, imagine how small it would be if they not only were given the right training, education, and probably actually bought a vehicle that was fit for purpose, which is always my argument. Sorry, Alex, carry on.
No, I was going to say, I mean, a friend of a friend had a Volvo XC40 and drove it to Edinburgh from Cardiff. And they got back and complained to my friend that it had taken them 12 hours to get from Cardiff to Edinburgh in this car. And I thought, there's only one way this could have taken 12 hours, and that's if they stopped and fully charged at every single stop. And that's exactly what they'd done. So they'd driven it until it almost ran out, and then they just plugged it in until it reached 100%. And they just sat there and waited for it. As opposed to, once you get your head around that kind of comfort of just going, well, I know that I could do two short stops, take less time. It doesn't take that many journeys to know that, but it's just, I almost think rather than even a video, it could just be almost like a sheet of A5 paper, 5 things you need to know about this car, just the top tips to consider. And certainly the rapid charging side would be one of those. Do living with an EV is easy, but here's 5 things to get you off to the best possible start, and the rest of it you'll kind of discover by doing it anyway. And we're beyond the point where, when I used to drive around the country in a Renault Zoe back in 2014, 2015, I used to, before any journey, where I used to put in all of the different potential charging stops along the way, and then if I was feeling a bit nervous about whether I was going to get to the next one, I'd just try the next one in it and go, well, no, I've got plenty of range to get to past that one. I know I can get to the next one. And it would be a case of planning beforehand and then adjusting as I was going along. Whereas nowadays, you kind of don't really need to think about it. There's usually somewhere to stop. You can actually start to be picky based on price if you know that there's a Tesla one nearby, or or others that I know Ionity does discounted rates. You can get a membership scheme with that as well, and other ones do. There's ways to cut to save money and to know that you're going to get a kind of an easier charging experience. And also now, of course, we've gone the full arc, haven't we? We've gone from the early days of having to carry a wallet full of RFID cards around.
Well, not anymore. Not anymore after legislation, because everything.
That's what I mean. So we've gone from that to apps, which then meant that you could have an app and you could register, and you didn't have to order a card and wait for it to arrive. You could register at the charger, which was flawed as well. To now just being able to tap and go at any. And I just say, if you seek out a rapid charger, you're guaranteed now that it'll have just a contactless card. Don't worry about it. Just turn up, plug in, tap your card, and go. And my father-in-law borrowed our Rifter a while ago, and he used it and said it was, he said it's just easy. It's not a problem at all. It's just having that confidence to know that you can do that. And these are these little things that you could, as I say, it's like a sheet of A5 that you could just stick in the glove box and go, look, you're probably not going to read this at the moment, but have a think about, the information's there. Read it over a coffee in the morning, or keep it in the car, and then if you're concerned about this or that, just have a look at it. It's not that much to learn, but it's little things just to get you off to a good start, isn't it?
Because MG do a QR code now on their sun visor, which takes you to videos that you can look at. That's which clever. Is quite funny, because obviously I helped them start to do that with some of the suggestions. But when I borrowed the plug-in hybrid one, the person who is like one of the owners ran in to get the QR code to stick on the PA. He said, just in case you need it. It's like, I think I'm going to be all right driving this plug-in hybrid. You don't need to give me the QR code.
I'd be confused driving a plug-in hybrid. Mod's got something quite interesting, which is gauged a little thought. There should be notes on chargers stating that to charge to 100% will take a long time, between 90 and 100. And I know that some of the Tesla chargers, and there might be other chargers out there, I don't know, where they limit charging state of charge, max charge like to 80 or what have you when it's a busy time, which I think is a great idea. But ultimately, whose responsibility is it to make sure that you know all of these things? I mean, I would say it's actually the driver. However, you could argue that whether it's the government, whether it's the charging company, whether it's the dealership, I think everyone needs to be involved. But I think charging is really the only thing that people need help with, because it is new. Because it's not like you need to learn how to check the oil, check your, you could argue coolant and stuff like that. But the maintenance is absolutely, well, I wasn't going to say zero because that would be a lie, but it is minimal compared to a petrol or diesel car. No AdBlue, all these things. So it is simply the charging. So yeah, whose responsibility is it? I think, maybe a little bit of everyone, but ultimately it is the driver that needs to be aware of these things and learn. But what's everyone else's thought about that?
It's not just learning it, though. It's also people, generally speaking, are selfish, aren't they? I mean, you think about the toilet paper shortages 5 years ago when lockdowns were kicking in. It's the same with charging. If you come, as I said earlier, if you come across a queue at your first charging hub, when you get to the next one, you might think, well, I'd normally charge to 80%, but if I'm going to have to wait again half an hour, 45 minutes to plug in, it creates a needless queue because you're waiting that extra. You're just kind of creating this bow wave of people at the chargers each time. People will take more than they need just to make sure that they don't have to charge, and they don't care about the people further on down the line, generally speaking. Unfortunately, even if they know the etiquette, they will sometimes do that.
Yeah. So
that's the challenge.
My biggest bugbear with the charging is it's not as easy to understand as people think. The 20 to 80% thing. This is what it's not as simple as. So the problem I found is you get lots of people that go one extreme to the other. So you've got on a rapid charger, yes, you don't really charge past 80% because it slows down. But then you've got some people who read the manual to the extent, and they won't let their car go lower than 20% or higher than 80%. And then they say, you get the newspaper articles, my car only does 100 miles range. Well, effectively, you've taken 40% of its range off it. And I think the thing to that is almost to try and explain to people that, if I'm leaving my car for a long period of time not using it, I'll leave it at 80%. But when you're driving it normally, you can go to 100% if you've got a long trip, and you can go low. I've pulled in the drive at 0%, but that's just to prove a point. So, but I think people need to explain that actually it's more nuanced than people think. It's not just 20 or 80%. It's just you wouldn't leave it for a long period of time at less than 20%, because especially with Teslas, have quite high vampire drain on some of them with all the systems in it. You could go into the unsafe part of battery usage, but you wouldn't go above 80% if you're leaving it for a long time, because it doesn't like to be at a high state of charge. If you talk to people like you and McTurk, it's kind of, but you can use that amount of power in the battery. It's certain conditions, isn't it? I think that's the hard thing to try and train people on.
Yeah. Well, my Tesla was at 0% for about 4 hours today on my driveway while it's doing its test, which was very unnerving, I must admit. A couple of comments in here. So, not that one. We already done that one. So Dean's put, common decency is to move from the charge as soon as you're finished. Some people don't have it, so idle feeds are essential. I don't know if you guys know, but Tesla's just done an update actually where it will show who is next for the charger if there is a queue. It's a little update. You might not have got that one. 2 rapid chargers failed today too. Well, that's not good. Had to charge up to 80% for a trip out. First whole bank of new rapids was shut off. Checked Zap Maps. Staring, they were all fine.
Saying they were all fine, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm guessing so. Yeah, so I think it's, the technology can help this. But going back to dealerships, because we've kind of gone off course like we do normally. But so what do we think that needs to be done? So I think we kind of all agree that there needs to be some sort of help video, some FAQs stating, all right, thanks, mate. There needs to be some FAQs, maybe a video. And I mean, do you think that for bearing in mind dealers, they are they are the kind of the brand, aren't they? You know, whether it's your Kias and all the rest of it, should they be taking their customers to a rapid charger, or should they have a rapid charger on site and actually show them how to do it? I think actually, you know, as they say in the motor trade, bums on seats sell cars, chargers in plugs, you know, obviously sell chargers. But what I'm getting at here is actually first-hand experience is what would help. But are there any other things that, you know, there's been a lot of focus on charging, but are there any other topics and subjects where we think that people are kind of missing out on potential education and experience? Mainly, education from the dealers driving an EV other than the charging. Batteries, maybe?
The range thing, it's as well as the charging, and is that the range thing is the opposite way around to an ICE vehicle. In that, generally speaking, with an EV, you'll get your lowest range on the motorway and your highest range in town. And so people look at the WLTP side of things and think, well, if I'm getting this sort of range in town, I'll obviously get more when I go on the motorway. And obviously, that's something you've got to kind of bear in mind, is that it's, you know, you're in an ICE vehicle where you won't be watching the range all the time. You might be watching it more in an EV because it's that bit shorter, and you'll notice it on the journeys where you're going the furthest more than you will around town, where you can plug it in, you know, when it gets down to about sort of 20-30%, just stick it on to charge on the drive or whatever. That's something just to get people's heads around. Is it's like it probably can make this journey, but you know, you're going to perhaps see a limited. If you're used to driving around town, those occasional long journeys, if you're only going on the motorway every once in a while, you will see a slight drop off in range. Just again, a couple of those journeys in the bag, and you quickly realise that you can do it. Just explaining that as well, I think is quite valuable.
Yeah, Jess, what do you think? Is there any other kind of subjects that where dealers could really help someone get used to an EV in terms of giving them a bit of a heads up on certain things?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of areas, but then as I start to think about it, I kind of think, well, actually, should that be the dealer's responsibility? And then that kind of brings me back to this thought of like, well, whose responsibility is it? And how do we share that kind of burden? Because I think everyone goes, it's not me. I'm not going to do it. And I think charging is a big one. And I do actually love this idea of having, you know, a dummy charger or a rapid charger at a dealership for people to plug into. But then which brand do they use? Is it plug in and then tap your card? Is it tap your card, then plug in? What about discounts if you use an app or stuff like that? There is so much that I think dealerships look at and go, you know what, we're actually better off not doing any of this and letting people figure it out. But, you know, I still have people coming to me and saying, can you charge your EV when it's raining? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. And like, totally valid question if you don't know. And I, you know, I always say to people, look, there are no stupid questions. But and I'm hoping by the time people get to a dealership, they've probably figured out those kind of basics of you know, can you do this with an EV? But I think, and again, I don't think we can put this on dealers, because how could we? I think there's such a huge problem with misinformation from the media, from naysayers, whoever it might be, that we've got such a big battle to combat that, in terms of, you know, like people saying that EVs catch on fire. And, you know, they're worried about this. And, you know, I had a woman argue with me about batteries the other day because they're not eco-friendly, and they're talking about mining and all of this kind of thing, which are valid concerns. But they're talking about news stories that they read 5 years ago. And there's just not enough information getting out to the public, be it through the brands, the media, whoever it might be, to educate these people on, you know, like, actually stuff's changed, stuff's got better. Rarely have to queue at a charger now like you did in 2021, because there's a lot more chargers and people have figured out that, you know, you don't need to get to 100%, etc., etc. But people kind of get to that point where they're like, well, you know, I read all those news stories 5 years ago and it's obviously terrible out there, so of course I'm not going to get one. I don't know whose responsibility it is to fix that, but it has to be someone's, otherwise we're going to keep going around in these circles.
No, absolutely.
Sure.
It was, just there's a comment that just flew in. Dealers will put all their effort into a sale and then upsell finance, gap insurance, service packages, accessories, SuperGuard. Don't forget alloy wheel cover and paint. You know, all the other extras. We used to have a really good song about SuperGuard, me and my friend, when we used to sell it. I'm not going to start singing now. You'll be pleased to hear. It's it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there must be so many avenues where you can get the information. So are people just being lazy and they're just not finding out?
I think a lot of the time people don't want to find out. They've decided that an EV isn't for them, and you're not gonna change their mind unless you just happen to be in a situation.
EVs, not the
Okay.
ones that think, not the ones that think that, oh yeah, what about the children that go down the lithium mines? I'm like, lithium mines? That always gets me every time. I'm like, oh God, help me.
I think that the thing there is that people don't want to help themselves. They think it should be easy. They were told it's easy. People have been raving about electric cars, and they have to get an electric car because they won't be able to buy a petrol or a diesel one soon. And then they're just angry about it, and that means that they're not motivated to make change, because there are lots of people who buy a brand new EV and just figure it out without support from a dealership.
Jess, are you saying that they don't want to make it work? They're trying to find excuses of.
Am I really cynical?
There's definitely people out there like that. I mean, it's a bit like, I've been talking to a few people, and I think Kev and Alex probably agree or have experience of this, where, you know, electric vehicles might go into a fleet and they might be great electric vehicles, fit for purpose. You know, they've got the right range. They've done the EV planning. The charging network's great. They've optimized the charging. They've got the right number. They've got the right chargers, something that Zero software can do, Dynamon. But it's the hearts and minds, isn't it? The hearts and minds is so, so key. Because if you don't kind of, you know, if you just chuck someone an electric car and they're not really up for it, and they're just going to pin it to the floor, they're going to and just waste the battery. They're just going to sit at the charger. Oh yeah, it's not charging. Oh no, longer lunch break. So I think there's quite a lot of hearts and minds where it can go wrong. And I suppose from a public point of view, you know, maybe looking for excuse, then they may be nervous that it's not going to work as they think it will, and that first bad experience, and then their back is up, isn't it? What do you reckon, Alex?
I reckon there's a big price issue with this, and I know I bang this drum a lot. Interesting you say about fleets. I had an interesting conversation with someone in the fleet industry who, not sure whether they want to be quoted on this or not, but they said it's interesting that people talk about, you know, battery fires and range and charging and how all, you know, lithium mines and all the rest of it, and suddenly you present them with a low benefit and kind tax bill and they don't really care. You know, I haven't got a charger at home. I couldn't possibly have an EV. Oh, maybe I could. Yeah, and it's like the money thing is a big deal. And I think once you start getting some of these cheaper EVs on the market, I know there's some very, very cheap ones. You know, it's very, very cheap, you know, in the teens now. But I mean, once you get the low 20,000s where they're kind of, I don't want to say proper cars because I don't mean it like that. I mean, where they can be somebody's only car and they're not quite compromised on range and charging speed. So your likes of your Renault 5 and so on, which I've been raving about on here for months. But the cars like that, where they've got a real appeal to them and the money is right, I think people will, you know, that'll do some of the dealers' hard work for them. We've got quite a lot of buzzes around here now. Those are all seeming to sell quite well, considering,
they're on offer on the NHS scheme, by the way.
Oh, that might be why there's quite a lot of them around here.
What did you say, Kev? I didn't hear that.
They're on offer on the NHS salary sacrifice scheme at the moment.
They were knocking them out cheap. They had some crazy deal used on PCP where you get an absorbent amount for your part exchange and all the rest of it. I mean, they are beautiful cars to drive, but range isn't great on them, and the charging speeds, what is it, 100 kilowatts, 125? Yes, I mean, I don't know what the long wheelbase one's like, but just go back into the comments because there's some interesting ones in here. Mod Scotsman, I've seen so many posts on forums with new EV owners, secondhand mainly, not knowing how to charge and what apps, etc. they need. More basic education is needed, not just from dealers. Yeah, agreed. When commuter branch line, when petrol and diesel is £5 per litre, folk might be interested. Buy the wallet and their hearts and minds will follow. EV fleet implementation can be the challenge. Education is key.
Yeah, it's one of the things, isn't it, with the price of them, they're coming down. But I mean, they're just funny that we spoke about when you said it can only do 125 kilowatt charging. If you go back to when I started, 44 was a fast charger, and now we mono it's only doing 125. So
yeah, that's because I'm blessed. as you know, Kevin, and I'm not going to say the T word, my Mondeo. But yeah, it's yeah. I think dealerships need to work a bit harder. I think there are dealerships out there that are doing a really, really good job. I think then it goes down to, okay, what about the supermarkets? What are the supermarkets doing? I'm pretty sure they're doing naffle because they've got no responsibility with it. There might be, I don't know, you guys, have you had any experience with the, I could be unjustly calling them out here. What are the supermarkets like? Have you guys had any experience with them at all?
No.
No. It'd be interesting to find out. Maybe I'll do a mystery shop. After all this talk, I feel like I need to do some FAQs on charging now. Some funny ones. I mean, they'll have my face in it. That'd be funny enough. But there we go. But is there anything else that we could talk about? I was thinking about the battery side of things, that on NMC batteries, that really you shouldn't charge them more than 90 up to 90% if it's, you know, daily driving. Only charge it to 100% if it's kind of you're doing a once in a while long journey. I don't know how much of that is being spoken about. Bear in mind, most batteries at NMC, there's not that many LFP batteries out there.
Then saying that, you know, I've run fleets with Hyundai Konas that were kept at 100% and still the same range after 5 years. So I think actually it's not really an issue. The one thing that a lot of dealers don't ask, which they should, especially with that, is so many people are disappointed because they get sold an EV and they haven't got the ability to charge at home. The first question should be, can you charge at home or work? Because all you're going to do is get an annoyed customer back who you say it'll save them a fortune, and then they're stuck paying like motorway charge prices.
It's a good point.
This car's going to bankrupt me.
It's a good point. I don't know, we come back to charging, but I think from a duty of care point of view, and we used to do this duty of care point of view when we used to sell, we were told that by Audi that really we should be finding out the customer's mileage before recommending petrol or diesel. And we used to get people coming in, yeah, I'll do 10,000 miles a year, I'm going to have a diesel, definitely want a diesel. You know about the DPF filter and you might have issues with DPF and blah, 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 be clogged up. No, definitely want a diesel. And then some customers were receptive to it because I think the cylinder on demand 1.4 TFSI Audi A3, it's very specific, was really, really good at fuel efficiency. And yeah, that's what I would use to recommend instead of a 2-litre diesel. Obviously, there's the price difference between petrol, diesel, and range, and all the rest of it. But yeah, no, you make a really good point there, Kevin. Because I would certainly say that there's no point having an electric car unless you've got cheap charging at home or at work, unless you've got some dying need to have, you know, zero tailpipe emissions. But yeah, just what's your thoughts on that? Do you think that's the kind of right attitude, or have you got anything to add to it?
So I do agree that it's obviously so much easier. And I think if I wasn't able to charge at home, where, you know, my car sits most of the time and then I do the occasional longer journey, I'd be very frustrated with it because it would mean that I would have to take my car somewhere else most of the time because I cycle to work. So yeah, if I, you know, it would be frustrating. But I know a lot of people who can't charge at home who enjoy an EV. But I think then, again, going back to responsibility, we then need to look at the responsibility of, say, councils to put chargers in the right places, which I know that they're trying to do, but the people that are doing it do not know anything about electric cars. And I consulted with my local council probably in 2021, 2022, and they listened to absolutely nothing I said and did basically the opposite. Only now are they starting to put in the right kinds of chargers. And I think we've just got it's something like 15 in more or less sensible places, but they're still not in residential streets. Some of them are, but for the most part, these chargers are in places where they're just taking up normal parking bays, and there's no rules for who can park there. So most of the time, they're still going to be iced. So I think that we need to do something so people who don't have driveways and who can't charge at home can still get an electric car, because that they will need to at some point, presumably. But if the public chargers that are maybe slightly more affordable are in the wrong place, then that doesn't serve them. That doesn't help them. I think councils, and not all councils, some are doing it well, but a lot of councils are just putting in chargers because that's what they think that they need to do now, and then they don't know what they're doing. They're just being sold chargers and putting them in.
Yeah,
Do you think what's your kind of view why they did it a slightly different way? Because all the chargers I've got near me are, like you said, they're places where people just ice them up anyway, and the customers, they're like believe chargers, and they're like 54 pence per kilowatt hour, and which, yeah, I mean, that's why no one uses them, obviously. But why do you think, was it a price thing, or was it just bad, just bad decisions?
I think it was good salespeople from charger companies who could either sell it in such a way or do a great deal, and then we ended up having, I think it ended up with rapid chargers in residential areas, which is not the right move, as I'm sure most people will agree. But yeah, and then in places where people aren't going to be using them. So yeah, it's one of those frustrating things where, again, like in some dealerships, it's people who don't know about electric cars are trying their best to do the electric car things, but they're not doing it with any knowledge. And I was at an event recently, and someone asked the question to this panel of councils, who here drives an electric car? And none of them put their hand up. And this was on a panel about charging. So I think that says a lot about about who's in councils talking about this stuff and pushing this through. And I think that's a problem.
Because I think I can speak from personal experience here. So what you see to get in a lot of councils is, so in the day job, I put a lot of charges in, but that's because I've been involved in every step of the process. Whereas in a council, you'll have someone who's in charge of the car parks, and they're seeing it as a revenue thing because they're losing spaces. There's someone else who does the environmental thing. So that you're going through possibly 4 or 5 departments, which then they don't communicate and stuff. And as you say, a lot of them don't drive EVs. I mean, the Swansea Council example is that when the electricity price was high, how much do you think they charged for a destination charger per kilowatt hour?
£1 a kilowatt hour.
£1 a kilowatt hour. And then they said no one's using them. It's like, well, obviously if I live in Swansea, I'm not going to pay £1 when I can charge at home. So you're only going to get visitors, and they're put off by the experience thinking, well, I can go to a rapid charger and it's cheaper. So
I think, to be fair to them, and I'm trying to be fair to everyone, if you don't own an electric vehicle and you get in advice from multiple different areas, and when I used to be BDM sales at a DC charging infrastructure company, people wanted advice from me all the time. It was free advice all the time, and I always tried to give the best advice I could, not from a salesperson point of view, because I do give a toss, that it is right. I think they have got a tricky position, especially if they've got that many layers in terms of getting the decisions done. So they're not in the easiest position there. But then again, I think if they're talking there are so many advisors out there. But then again, a lot of these EV advisors do charge a lot of money, and I would argue that some of them aren't potentially experienced in all the different avenues and have a great, good overriding picture of what might be best. Charging price is key. I granny charge at home and use the charge cube at work once a week. Yes, that must be a Felton charge cube. But public charging is the same as motorway service prices, splash and dash only. Something very interesting I found. I'm not sure if you guys know this. Someone put a comment on the last EV podcast, so I'm not sure if you're on today, but he put on there about the efficiencies of AC charging versus DC charging. And I never knew this, but this guy, he shared a YouTube video with me, and there was a 20% loss from a granny charger, about a 10% loss from a wall box charger, and then the DC charging that he was using, it was only about 4 or 5% loss, which is pretty good from my knowledge from a DC charger, because they're normally about 94% efficiency. Did you guys know that there was that much loss on a granny charger?
That chimes with something that I was told actually the other week.
Yeah,
I've had a message about asking about this the other week, and that actually answers a question that a friend was asking me about.
Well, I shared it on the Facebook group, so if anyone's interested, jump on Chargeheads UK Facebook group. It was a really interesting video. I would say that it could be more accurate, the test that he was doing, but I think what he did was pretty good, to be fair. So if anyone's charging at home on a granny charger, you could be saving 10% each kilowatt hour, you do the math, you could quite easily pay for a wall box charger after, I don't know, what's that, a year, 2 years, just something to think about if you are charging on a granny charger. So yeah, I think on that bombshell, not that it was a bombshell, it was more of a electric leak, wasn't it? But what we normally do, Jess, is we talk about what we're doing this week, or potentially, you know, any events that we're going to. Jess, ladies first, what are you up to this week? Or have you got any events that you're going to, or where can we find you? And yeah, please shout out what you do, and yeah, just to give people an idea of where to find you again.
Yeah, so this week I believe I am working on some edits of a white paper. Not interesting stuff at all. Well, it's interesting to me. It will be interesting once it's published, but it's not anything anyone wants to hear about yet. I'm actually going to a sci-fi convention. That's the next the next event I have coming up. So a little bit of, you know, leisure time, which I don't get very often. But my next event is Everything Electric, and then coming up at the end of April, I'm hosting the technical stage at the Commercial Vehicle Show. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome.
So yeah, love being on stage, and I love trucks. So I'm super hyped about that. And yeah, we've got lots of good sessions coming up. And if anyone wants to find me, LinkedIn is the best place. Just search my name, Jess Shanahan. You'll find me. I'm basically everywhere.
Jess, if you like trucks, we need to have another conversation. So yeah. Anyway, it's another thing. Alex, what are you up to this week?
My usual mix. I've got a bit of an ICE focus earlier in the week. I'm doing my stuff for Performance VW for the next couple of days. I also have a white paper that's under wraps, but I'm driving a new EV later in the week, which, without having emails to hand to check whether it's under embargo or not, I'm going to be cautious and say that you'll have to wait and find out next weekend. But
it's always secret squirrel, Alex. Always secret squirrel. What about yourself, Kev?
So I'm doing boring IT stuff for most of it because I'm in trading in like Microsoft Intune, but then I am testing the Polestar 4 from Thursday, which and then some secret stuff at the weekend, but which I can't talk about until after we've done it. But it is EV related.
It's all very, very secret squirrel. I'm just going to be an open book. There's plenty of white pages in my open book at the moment, but nothing of value at the moment. But I'm exceptionally excited because I'm going to be releasing this Wednesday whole new video about me purchasing the cheapest Tesla Model 3 Performance in the country, and it's got 217,000 miles. So please tune in for that. It's bit of a story of me starting and going to get it and stuff, so I think it would be quite interesting, and the price will be at the end of the video, so check that out. And yes, I've got a few meetings today with Dynamon, a few truck meetings highlighting our EV planning tool using data, so I'll be looking forward to that. And I very much look forward to commercial vehicle show. I'm going to be there on a stand, so looking forward to that. SMMT was last week, actually. Lots of people talking at that. Lots of focus around Milance, the very exciting truck charging at Immingham. So we had Raoul from Milance talking about that, which was great. Bumped into quite a few leaders in the EV world, let's say. But yeah, plenty going on as always. And next week, quite an interesting one next week, what we're talking about. I just have to remind myself exactly what it is again. It is, are the governments getting the EV strategy right? Are the governments getting it right? That is going to be a fantastic podcast. I can't wait for that. So I just want to say thank you. First of all, Jess, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Kev, Alex, thanks once again. Just last couple of comments. Solar DC to DC, very efficient. Yeah. Maybe that's something we can talk about again. Nanu Shazbat. Good man. Take care. See everyone next time.